Hello and welcome to our first week of video editing. Just like our other programs that we've used, we will be working in Adobe Creative Cloud, and we'll be working with Adobe Premiere Pro, which is consistently ranked as one of the best video editing software programs on the market. And because it's part of Adobe's Creative Cloud subscription, it's become one of the most used video editing programs. You get Creative Cloud, you get the whole package. You get Photoshop, you get Adobe Audition, you get Adobe InDesign, Adobe Acrobat. So it just makes sense that Adobe Premiere Pro has become one of the top apps. And that's what you'll be using for most of your time as a student here. And hopefully in a profession, it's what you'll be using as well. But even if you use something else, a lot of the principles we'll learn in video editing throughout the next few weeks will be similar to any other professional video editing program. Our objectives today will be to understand the basic layout of Adobe Premiere Pro and its functions. We're going to start creating a video project. This is a project that we'll work on over the next few weeks, and we'll learn some basic video editing techniques in Premiere that you can see here. I've included the handout for the week, a step-by-step guide to do what we're going to do this week, as well as Adobe's Premiere Pro user guide and some helpful video links in addition to the video you're watching now if you need some additional help. And the file that we'll be working with is available for download here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that and let it download on my computer. And then, of course, you have on your Canvas page the link to submit your final project. So I've opened up Adobe Premiere Pro on my desktop. The first thing that I want to do is create a new project. So if you've used some of our other Adobe products before you completed this module, you'll know that Adobe likes it when you create a file to share, to save initially, as opposed to most other programs. You work on a project and then you save it. With Adobe products, they want you to create a project and save it. So that way its auto save function can be utilized. So for my project name here, I'm just going to call it Video Project 1. And as with other Adobe projects that we've been working on, you want to make sure you're saving it in a place where you know you can easily find it. So for me, I'm going to save it in a project location where I've been saving everything for the foundations class. And I created a nice video editing folder, and that's where I want it to save. So I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to click Create. And what this will pull up eventually is the Video Project 1 window. And this is something I want to go over with you so you understand what we're looking at here. After you create your project name, so it can autosave, you'll notice that you'll have 4 distinct windows in your Adobe Premiere project screen. In the upper left, you'll have what we call your source window. In your bottom left, you'll have your project window. In your upper right, you'll have your program window. And in your bottom right, you'll have your timeline. And in between here, you have a little toolbar. And I'll explain what each of these mean as we move along. So the first thing it's asking you to do is import your media to start. And this is that project the file that you downloaded from Canvas. So for me on this computer, I know it's going to show up in my downloads. And here it is, Hudgens Interview. And I'm going to go ahead and click Import. And that will show up right here in my project window. Now, this is going to be simple this week because this is the only thing we'll have here. But as you work in Adobe Premiere more and more, you're going to have more files that will be opened up here, and it's helpful to save it each file so you know what it is. And this is something we'll get into more next week when we start putting in B-roll. So I'm going to double click on my Hudgens interview file here, and you can see it opens up in my source window. So the reason why Adobe Premiere Pro lays things out like this is because back when I learned video editing in the 90s, and we didn't have computer technology like we have now, we actually were sitting in an editing room, and on the left-hand side, we had a TV that had all the source material that we were working it with, which is why it's called our source window. And on the right, we had our final program window, which was what the edited project would look like. So that's why Adobe Premiere Pro is set up this way. And whatever you would click on in your project window is what will appear here. I asked Professor Hudgens, I believe, 3 different questions, and she answered them like the professional that she is. And what we're going to do this week is I want to basically edit me out of this video so you don't hear me asking the questions. And so what we'll have is just a sequence of her answering every question. And how we're going to do this is the way I like to edit on Adobe Premiere Pro. And like I said, with our other projects, there are a million ways to do the same thing in Adobe. And if you know of a way that works better for you, then great. Go ahead and do it that way. I'm teaching you this technique called 3-point editing. And what I'm going to do is bring it back to the very beginning here, and simply 3 points means you use 3 fingers. Okay, you have 1 finger on the I button on your keyboard, you have 1 finger on the O button on your keyboard, and you have 1 finger on the space bar. Why? The space bar is what I like to use instead of pressing play here and clicking stop there. The space bar is just an easy way to hit play and to hit stop on your project. So I have my project open. I have Professor Hudgens here. What I'm going to do is, as soon as right before she starts talking, I'm going to hit the I button, and that I stands for input. So I'm going to hit the space bar to let it play. I. So do you see I hit the I button right here, and I hit it as I'm playing it. You don't have to stop it and then hit I. You can hit it as it's playing. And I want to hit the O when she's done answering my questions. So let's listen to her in real time. And then as soon as she's done answering my question, I'm going to hit O for my out point.
I like teaching at Piedmont because we have the best students, and I feel really qualified to say that because I've taught other places. And the students here, we have smaller class sizes, so I get to know my students, and they're just like, easy to talk to. They're super smart. They're the best.
Oh, so I have my in point here and my out point here, because remember, I don't want to have any of me talking in this video. And now that I have my in point and out point, you can see it highlighted here. This is telling me what I have selected. I am going to click anywhere in my source window and hold it down. And then I'm just going to drag that into my timeline. And boom, you can see that now my timeline is populated, whereas it was empty before. And we have my program window here, which is what my final project is going to look like. And I'm just going to hit the space bar. Now that I'm clicked in my timeline, I'm going to hit the space bar to see what we have here.
I like teaching at Piedmont because we have the best students, and
That's
I feel
good.
really
That's
qualified to say
exactly
that
what I
because I've
want.
taught
Now I
other
want to explain a
places.
little something to you about the timeline. So you can see here that we're taking up 2 tracks within the timeline. This first track, which is V1, that is a video track. The second track, which is A1, is an audio track. Now, if you did the Adobe Audition projects, you know that there's multiple layers of audio that you can have. When you have 2 layers, you have stereo sound. We're just working with mono sound here, which is just the same sound coming in through the left and right channel. But you do have that ability with additional audio tracks here to have stereo sound. Something we can work with at a later date, but right now I'm just showing you that for your knowledge. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to go back, click into my source window, and I want to keep playing and set my next in point and out point.
I
I
have discovered that my favorite class to teach is theory and research, and I didn't expect it to be because it's my first time teaching it. But it is so much fun. We get it so discussion based, and everyone in there is really smart. So I have really learned to love that. All my classes are fun, but I love teaching theory and research.
oh, okay. So now I have my in point and out point, and I'm going to go ahead and click anywhere in that video, hold down my mouse button, and just drag that right next to the file I already have, and it should snap to it automatically. There's functions here in the toolbar, which we'll talk about later, that will allow it to snap in place. So now let's see if we got everything we wanted here. So I'm going to start this right at the edge of the other clip and let it play into the next clip. Okay, that looks good. So now I'm going to keep playing here and see where my next in point and out point is. I
Being accessible to students is important to me because I went to so many big universities where professors just weren't. And so even when I was a student, if I had questions or if I felt like I needed something, if I did go and talk to them, I felt like I was a burden. And I told myself pretty early on in my master's program that if I ever became a professor, I wouldn't be like that. That I would be someone who students could come to. And then my first year here, I just put snacks in my office as a way to lure students, and it became something they have come to expect.
oh, okay, and I hit the space bar to stop. Um, and I want to drag that in here like I have before, but I want you to see something here. You can see now my window, my timeline is getting a little smaller here. And I could go ahead and drag this in at the very end. But you can still see I'm not seeing all of my timeline. This little scrubber bar, you can click on it and it will let you see more of your timeline. So right now we're about at the 1 minute 15-second mark. And again, if I want to zoom in on something a little more, I can just do it to the left. But going to the right lets me see more. I'm going to find my next in point and out point here on my source video, spacebar. I. Now there, I think I don't want to hit my endpoints. I think I hit it a little too soon because she does a little thought process there. So I'm going to set it a little later. So I'm going to hit the space bar. I.
I think Piedmont students take their education more seriously because they're here to learn versus students I've had other places who were really concerned about GPA, really concerned about grades. And students at Piedmont obviously care about those things too. But I also feel like for the majority of them, they care about getting the content and leaving the class with more knowledge versus just making sure they keep that 4.0.
Oh, so I'm going to go ahead and hold on the mouse, drag it down in here in my timeline. The one nice thing about using 3-point editing is that I did set an in point and an out point. However, I can still edit my video and my selection within my timeline. So, what do I mean by that? Let's say I wanted to stop her
About getting the content and leaving the class with more knowledge
at here more knowledge. I can go ahead and just take my mouse, bring it, make sure the arrow is pointing left there like it is, and then just drag it a little bit to the left. And again, it'll snap to my timeline there.
for the majority of them. They care about getting the content and leaving the class with more knowledge.
There we go. So cut out what else she said. And you can always bring it back. You can always expand it back to wherever you want. And I think that's a really good point for me to keep it at. And then I think I have one more question here. I'll go back to my video.
I never lived on campus when I was a student. I never lived in a dorm. But I've thought about that experience a lot and what it must be like, especially for first year students who come to school and they might feel a little bit out of place or feel like maybe they're a little homesick. Maybe they don't buy their own food. And so I like being a place where they can come and it can be a little bit like home. And it can be like, oh, I can go get a snack. I can go get a Band-Aid. I'm not completely on my own out here having to take care of myself 100% for the first time.
Oh, and I'm going to go ahead and drag that here. And again, I'm not seeing my whole timeline, so I want to pull my scrubber out so I could see more. We can see now my video is almost a little over 2 minutes long. So here I have my Hudgens interview file with my voice edited out. One other thing I wanted to show you here. So I showed you how to do 3-point editing. To drag and drop things into your timeline. I showed you how you can take clips within your timeline and make them shorter or make them longer if you want. You can also do that on the front end of things. For example, here.
I think Piedmont students take their education more seriously because they're here to learn versus
Let's say I just
students I've
wanted
had
to have her start at verses, which would be ridiculous, but let's just say that's what I wanted to do. I want to show you how I could then go ahead and just drag that in. And you can see here,
versus students I've had
we
other
would
places
start
who
with
were really
verses,
concerned
but I don't
about
want to do that. And by the way, if you did do that, you can see now we have a blank space in our timeline. All I would do is take my 2 tracks, highlight them, and bring them to connect with the track before that. But again, I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to go edit, undo, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring this back out where we want it to be. So I have my interview video all set here.
I like teaching at Piedmont because we have the best students, and I feel really qualified to say that because I've taught other places. And the students here, we have smaller class sizes, so I get to know my students, and they're just like easy to talk to. They're super smart. They're the best. I have discovered that my favorite class to teach is theory and research, and I didn't expect it to be because it's my first time teaching it, but it is so much fun. We get it so discussion based, and everyone in there is really smart. So I have really learned to love that. All my classes are fun, but I love teaching theory and research. Being accessible to students is important to me because I went to so many big universities where
Okay,
professors
so
just
I
weren't.
think when I'm listening to this interview clip, I like what she says about theory and research, but I think maybe we should put that right before this clip. So I want to show you how I'm going to move this over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these files and move them to the right a little bit so I have room. Now I'm going to take this clip where she talks about teaching theory and research and move that right here. Okay, and then you can see now I'm creating spaces here. So I'm going to highlight that, drag that here, And then I'm going to take these two. I'm just highlighting over the timeline, holding my mouse key down. I'm going to highlight those two and drag them here. So now I just readjusted this a little bit to see how it sounds, and I think where things might flow better.
I have discovered that my favorite class to teach is theory and research, and I didn't expect
Okay,
it
she
to be
talks about
because my
theory
first
and
year
research
teaching,
because I think that will sound better going into this next clip.
but I love teaching theory and research. I think Piedmont students take their education more seriously because they're here to learn versus students I've had other places who were really concerned about
Very good.
GPA.
So I'm happy with this. So my video now is at about 2 minutes, under 2 minutes and 15 seconds. What we're going to do next week is we're going to put some B-roll over this, and we'll explain what that is, where we have Professor Hudgens teaching and some other video that we recorded of her. And then we're going to, in the next module after that, we're going to learn how to insert name slides, chyrons are called, and also how to put effects in the video as well, like crossfades and things like that. But for now, we're done with our interview and editing our interview clips. So the last step that we will need to do is save this. There's two different types of files that you want to save when you're saving your Adobe Premiere files. The first thing is you want to save your project. Remember when we went ahead and created this whole project, which we called Video Project 1, which we could see up on our screen? Well, we want to save this project. So I'm just going to click File and Save to do that. Then the next thing we want to do is create a export file, because simply saving it as a project, if you go ahead and you submit that as your assignment or you send that to someone, no one's going to be able to do anything with that. I won't be able to open it. Even though I have Premiere, I don't have your file saved, this Hudgens interview file saved on my computer. So it's not going to know where to find anything. So you want to export your files when you save. So we'll go here and we'll click export. And if you can't find an export button, you could go to File and Save As, and it will pull up the same type of file. And you can see here we have Hudgens interview.mp4. That's going to kind of be the automatic save file as an MP4, and that's completely fine. And then you get all these, this is the location, should be saving where you created your project, should be saving in that same folder. If not, you can click on it and it should open up a window that will tell you where do you want to save it. Here's where things can get a little complicated. So in this preset, it says match source, adaptive high bit rate. If I click on that, it's going to give you a bunch of different options of how do you want to save your file. And I think if you look at adaptive high bit rate, which is what's selected on mine, you look down at the bottom right of the screen, it tells you that is a 284 megabyte file under estimated file size. So what is that? That's about more than a quarter of a gigabyte. It's a pretty big file to save and send. I think Piedmont email only lets you send things that are 200 megabytes, so you wouldn't even be able to email this file utilizing school email. I'm going to go down to high quality 720 HD and click on that. And you can see here my estimated file size is now 170. Now, for what we're working with, this is completely fine. When you're doing stuff in a video editing class, or if you're a film major and you're working on films, you're going to want to save stuff at a higher quality. But this is the lowest quality HD video that we can do. The format H.264 is a standard format working with Mac computers, so you want to keep that format. And we want to save it as is. All the other files are fine. So now I'm going to click export. And you can see here my video is exporting, it's going to take about 30 seconds for me. The bigger your files, the longer your videos. If this video went on for 10 minutes, it would take significantly longer to export. In the next few weeks, when we start working with B-roll and editing it in transitions and things like that, it's going to take much longer. So your export time will depend on how long and how much you're doing with your file. So it looks like my file is done exporting. So I'm going to go ahead and go out of Premiere Pro here. My file is here under Hudgens Interview MP4. I can see here it's 169 megabytes. I'm just going to go ahead and double click on this because I want to see if this is exactly what I
I like
wanted.
teaching at Piedmont because we have the best students,
Looks like
and
it.
I feel really qualified. They're the best. Being
Okay, that's definitely my file because I could see the clips. So this is what I'm going to want to upload in Canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and open Canvas again, and I'm going to go to my assignment submission page, and I'm going to go ahead and I am actually in the professor view, but I'll go ahead and click Start Assignment and Upload File. And I want to go ahead and upload this Hudgens interview file and click Submit Assignment. Once that's there, and you can see it's going to take a little bit of time. But once that's submitted, then I am done for the week. And congratulations, you have officially learned some of the basics of Adobe Premiere and put together a basic clip. Look forward to seeing you next week where we're going to work more with video editing and working with B-roll and placing that over our interview project. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me.